A number of people had specific questions about checking for certain kinds of scoring pattern. How do you check for a straight? How do you check for three of a kind? How do you check for three pairs? I think the answer, or one possible answer, is one of our big takeaways from today, which is use a data structure. If you just have a list of the particular die values that got rolled, it's pretty tricky to figure out how are you going to check to see if you got three separate pairs. But if you instead make an array of counts where the index is the die value and the value is how many dice had that value, in other words, index 3 is asking how many threes are there. And we see there's 3 threes, so there's the 3. Index 4 is saying how many 4s, and there's 1 4, so that's why this is 1. Index 5 is saying how many 5s are there. There aren't any 5s, and so that's why there's a 0 here. So if we have an array which has all the counts, this makes all the problems much easier to think about. If I want to check to see if there's a straight, think about what do you expect to see in counts if you have a straight. You should see that the count of every single value is 1, because you have 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 1 6. What about 3 of a kind? Well, 3 of a kind in a counts array would look like this. It would look like the number 3 for a particular value. So all you have to do is see, does your counts array have a 3 anywhere? And if it does, you also know what the value is because that's the index where you saw the 3. I'm going to let you think about whether or not there are 3 pairs, but I think you can well imagine what you would expect to see in a counts array if you really had 3 pairs. So how's this look in code? Inside a play turn method that's going to return what the final score is from that turn, I'll have a turn score, which is what we're going to use to bank the points. I don't know how many times we're going to have to re-roll because that depends on what the user says. So a nice trick is to have a condition. Is the turn over, yes or no? So turnover will start by saying false because it is false. It's not true that the turn is over. But then the logic in here as we're rolling the dice and we're checking, at a particular point we can have an if statement. And I don't even know what it's going to look like yet. But there's going to be some condition where we're going to say, okay, now we know the turn is over. Like maybe they Farkle, or maybe they answer the question, do you want to roll again? They say no. So whatever the if statement is, if the turn is over, we can then say turn over equals true. And then when we get to the bottom of the while loop is going to continue looping while it is not true that the turn is over. That's what the exclamation mark is. It's the logical negation of turnover. So as soon as we set turnover to be true, it's no longer true that the turn, all the negations are getting confusing. So we're looping as long as it's true that the turn isn't over. As soon as we set it to true, the turn is over, and so we're going to stop looping. And so then at the end here, we can return turn score. I just finished saying that the right way to do all these checks is to have a counts array. So let's write a method. So we can have first a method that will do the die rolling. So it'll be array list of integer, or like die values, where we'll tell it how many dice do we want to roll. We're going to roll 6 dice, and it's going to tell us the values here. And then we can write another method, getCounts, where we give it the die values as input, and the output is going to be a counts array. So now we don't have to think about all the details of how are we going to roll the dice? How are we going to get that count array? We'll come back to those when we implement the method. Let's just assume that we have the array of counts that we want. And now you can do things like this. If has 3 of a kind, and you give it the counts. So if that's true, then we're going to figure out what do we want to do. Probably what we want to do is ask the user if they actually want to score those dice and then remove them if they do. And you can have a whole series of these. If has a straight counts like this. Then do something. So hopefully this will let you get a long way. I think if you can implement the roll dice method, the getCounts method, and all of these individual methods, that's going to create a kind of much cleaner framework for you to worry about. Come back in a different video to think about, doesn't matter how we sequence these, how do we think about the user input, how do we think about removing dice?